The detention block of Orvek Station was built for dangerous beings, war criminals, pirates, smugglers, and sometimes things much worse. The thick metal doors were designed to hold creatures twice the size of a human. Energy barriers hummed quietly across every cell. Armed guards stood at every corridor. Yet tonight, the entire security team was staring at something very unusual. Cell number 47. Inside that cell sat a human, not standing, not shouting, not threatening anyone. He was sitting calmly on the metal bench, eating a sandwich. Officer Crawl leaned closer to the energy barrier. "You're telling me this is the dangerous one?" Beside him, another guard checked his tablet. "That's what the report says." Crawl looked confused. The human didn't look dangerous, he looked bored. The man took another bite of his sandwich. Then he looked up at the guards. "Do you guys always stare at prisoners while they eat?" Crawl blinked. "You're unusually calm for someone in prison." The human shrugged. "I've had worse hotels." The guards exchanged looks. One of them stepped forward, the tall armored officer named Varek. He spoke in a low voice. "You understand why you're here?" The human swallowed his food. "Something about a security incident." Varek tapped his tablet. "You hacked a military transport ship." "Borrowed," the human corrected. "You disabled 3 defense drones. They were in the way. You opened the cargo bay doors mid-flight. That part was an accident." Crawl whispered to the other guard. "Why does he sound proud?" The human wiped his hands. "Are we done with the interrogation?" Varek frowned. "You don't seem worried." The human leaned back against the wall. "Should I be?" Varek pointed at the energy barrier. "This station is one of the most secure facilities in the sector." The human looked around the cell slowly. Then he nodded. "Nice design." Crawl raised an eyebrow. "Design?" The human stood up. He walked closer to the barrier. For the first time, the guards noticed something strange. He wasn't looking at them. He was looking at the walls, the lights, the ceiling, the vents, like he was studying everything. Crawl crossed his arms. "What are you doing?" The human smiled slightly. "Thinking." Varek narrowed his eyes. "About what?" The human tapped the metal wall beside him. "About how long this place would last if something went wrong." Crawl laughed. "Nothing goes wrong here." The human looked at him calmly. "That's what everyone says." For a moment, the corridor was silent. Then suddenly, a loud beep echoed through the detention block. The lights flickered. Crawl froze. What was that? Varek checked his tablet. Power fluctuation. The human slowly smiled. "Oh." Crawl looked at him suspiciously. "What?" The human sat back down on the bench. "Nothing." Another beep echoed, this time louder. And somewhere deeper inside the station, an alarm began to ring. Crawl looked at Varek. "That's not normal." Varek's tablet flashed red. "Security alert?" Crawl turned back toward the cell. The human was still sitting calmly, finishing his sandwich. Then he looked up at them and said quietly, "You might want to check your systems." The alarm sound spread across Orvek Station. Red lights began flashing along the detention corridor. Officer Crawl looked down at his tablet again. "Power grid instability?" Varek frowned. "That shouldn't happen in the detention sector." Behind the energy barrier, the human prisoner stretched calmly, like someone waiting for a train. Crawl noticed, "You look suspiciously relaxed." The human shrugged. "Your station is having a bad day." Crawl stepped closer to the barrier. "Did you do something?" The human smiled. "I'm locked inside a cell." Crawl looked at Varek. "He has a point." Suddenly, the lights flickered again. For a brief second, the energy barrier around the cell dimmed. Just for a moment. But the human noticed it. Crawl noticed the human noticing it. "Don't even think about it," Crawl warned. The human raised both hands slightly. "Relax. I'm just observing." Varek checked his tablet again. His expression changed. "That's strange." Crawl looked over. "What?" "The station reactor just reported a systems error." Crawl frowned. "That's impossible. The reactor is on the opposite side of the station." Before Varek could respond, the alarm changed. A louder tone echoed through the corridor. This one was different. Emergency leveled. Crawl's eyes widened. "That's a station-wide alert." Varek quickly opened the command channel. "Control, report." Static answered. Crawl frowned. "Control?" Still nothing. Behind them, the human quietly finished the last bite of his sandwich. He brushed crumbs off his hands. Crawl slowly turned toward him. You look like you expected this. The human tilted his head. Expected what? The alarms. The human looked thoughtful for a moment. Then he said something that made Crawl uncomfortable. Well, I did warn you. Another loud beep echoed through the detention block. Suddenly, several cell doors in the corridor sparked. Energy barriers flickered. Prisoners in other cells began shouting. Crawl swore. The containment grid is unstable. Varek typed rapidly on his tablet. No, something is interfering with the power routing. Crawl's voice dropped. Sabotage. The human leaned back on the bench, or bad engineering. Crawl pointed at him. You are enjoying this way too much. The human shrugged. I like puzzles. The lights flickered again, this time longer. The energy barrier in front of cell 47 weakened again. Crawl stepped closer to the control panel. He manually reinforced the barrier. The blue field brightened again. Crawl sighed with relief. Not today. The human watched quietly. Then he nodded approvingly. Good reaction time. Crawl frowned. Why do I feel like you're grading us? Varek suddenly froze. What? Crawl looked at him. Varek slowly turned his tablet toward him. The screen showed something disturbing, that a map of the station power grid. Large sections were turning red. Crawl swallowed. That's half the station. Varek nodded slowly. And the failure started. He zoomed in. Crawl's stomach dropped. Where? Varek pointed at the screen. Right here. Crawl stared. The blinking red marker was located exactly in one place. The detention block. Crawl slowly turned toward the human. You said you're just thinking. The human smiled. I was. Crawl stepped closer to the barrier. What did you do? The human looked at the ceiling calmly. Nothing yet. Crawl felt a cold chill. What do you mean yet? The human stood up slowly. Then he looked at the guards and said quietly, you should really fix your power grid. Crawl crossed his arms. Or what? The human smiled again. Then the lights went out. Complete darkness filled the corridor. For 3 seconds, nothing moved. Then, the energy barrier of cell 47 disappeared. Crawl heard footsteps inside the darkness. That a calm voice spoke. Now we have a problem. Darkness covered the detention block. For a few seconds, no one moved. Officer Crawl could hear only one thing. Footsteps, slow, calm. Inside cell 47, Crawl immediately grabbed his weapon. Emergency lights. A dim red glow flickered on across the corridor, just enough to see shadows. Crawl looked at the cell. The energy barrier was gone. The door was open, and the human was standing outside the cell. Crawl raised his weapon instantly. Stop! The human froze. Both hands slowly went up. Okay. Crawl's finger tightened on the trigger. How did you get out? The human looked down at the empty doorway. You saw the barrier disappear. That doesn't explain the door unlocking. The human shrugged. Your system did it for me. Crawl growled, don't move. Behind him, Varek was still fighting with his tablet. Security system is failing everywhere. Crawl didn't take his eyes off the human. Fix it. I'm trying. The human looked around the corridor calmly. Other prisoners were shouting now. Some were hitting their barriers. Some cells had already opened. Chaos was spreading. Crawl pointed the weapon closer to the human. You planned this. The human tilted his head. Planned is a strong word. You hacked the station. I prefer improved. Crawl was losing patience. Back inside the cell. The human looked behind him, the empty cell. Then he looked back at Crawl. That might be difficult. Crawl's voice dropped. What? The human pointed down the corridor. Crawl turned point. 3 more cell doors had opened. Alien prisoners stepped into the hallway. Some tall, some armored, some extremely dangerous. Crawl cursed under his breath. This is bad. Varek finally spoke. Containment systems are collapsing across the block. Crawl whispered. How many prisoners are loose? Varek checked the tablet. His voice went quiet. 32. Crawl slowly looked back at the human. You did this. The human shook his head. I just noticed the weakness. Crawl growled. You exploited it. The human smiled slightly. Of course. One of the alien prisoners down the hall roared loudly. Another smashed a wall console. Sparks flew everywhere. The situation was getting worse by the second. Crawl spoke into his comm security team to detention block immediately. Static answered. Still no connection. Varek looked worried. Station communications are down. Crawl took a slow breath. 32 prisoners. broken security, and communications, and one human standing calmly in front of him. Crawl pointed the weapon again. "You're coming with me." The human raised an eyebrow. "As a prisoner? As a suspect?" The human nodded. "That's fair." Crawl gestured forward. "Walk." The human began walking down the corridor slowly. "Calm, too calm," Varek whispered to Crawl. "You're trusting him?" Crawl whispered back. "I'm controlling him." Ahead of them, a massive alien prisoner stepped into the corridor 0.8 feet tall. Muscles like steel cables. Crawl recognized him immediately. Zorvok, one of the most dangerous prisoners in the sector. Zorvok looked down at the human, then at the guards. Then he smiled. Crawl tightened his grip on the weapon. "Stay back." Zorvok laughed. "You cannot stop all of us." Several more prisoners stepped out behind him. The hallway was filling fast. Crawl whispered, "This is going to turn into a riot." The human looked at the huge alien calmly. Then he sighed. "Seriously?" Crawl looked at him. "What?" The human cracked his knuckles. "I just got out of my cell." Zorvok stepped closer. "You will move aside, human." The human looked up at the giant alien. Then he said something very strange. "You guys really picked the wrong hallway." Crawl blinked. "What are you?" Zorvok lunged forward, and the human moved out fast. So fast Crawl barely saw it. 1 second, the human was standing still. The next second, Zorvok crashed into the wall. Hard. The giant alien slid down unconscious. The entire corridor went silent. Crawl stared. Varek stared. Even the prisoners froze. The human rolled his shoulders. Then he looked back at Crawl. "So, about that riot?" For a moment, no one moved. The giant alien Zorvok lay unconscious on the metal floor. 0.8 feet of muscle, defeated in seconds. Crawl slowly lowered his weapon. What was that? The human stretched his neck like nothing unusual had happened. Self-defense. Crawl stared at him. "You knocked out the most dangerous prisoner on the station." The human shrugged. "He attacked first." Behind them, the other prisoners stepped back. Even the most violent ones looked nervous now. They had all seen what just happened. The small human had dropped a monster in one move. One of the prisoners whispered, "Death Worlder." Another one stepped back. "Stay away from him." Crawl heard the word and looked at the human again. "You're from Earth, right?" The human nodded casually. "Last time I checked." Varek slowly spoke. "Earth is classified as a death world." Crawl swallowed. Only a few planets in the galaxy had that label. Planets with extreme gravity, dangerous wildlife, harsh environments. Most species couldn't survive there. Yet humans had evolved there. Crawl looked back at the unconscious alien. Zorvok weighs 300 kilograms. The human tilted his head. "Really?" Crawl stared at him. "You didn't know that?" The human shrugged. "I didn't check." Suddenly, a loud explosion echoed somewhere deeper inside the station. The floor shook slightly. Crawl grabbed his comm again. "Control. Respond." "Nothing. Just static." Varek checked the station map again. His tablet showed even more red zones. Security sectors 3, 4, and 5 are offline. Crawl whispered, "That's half the station." Prisoners began moving down the hallway now. Some were escaping. Some were searching for weapons. Chaos was spreading. Crawl looked at the human again. "You caused this." The human crossed his arms. "Technically, your power grid caused this." Crawl stepped closer. "You exploited it." The human didn't deny it. Instead, he asked a strange question. "How many prisoners are on this station?" Crawl frowned. "Over 300. The human nodded slowly. "And how many guards?" Crawl hesitated. 50. The human smiled slightly. "Yeah, that's not great odds." Crawl raised his weapon again. "Don't get any ideas." The human pointed down the corridor. "You might want to look behind you." Crawl turned quickly. More prisoners were coming down. At least 10 of them now. And they looked angry. One of them held a broken metal pipe. Another carried a stolen shock baton. Crawl whispered, "This is turning into a full prison break." Varek nodded nervously. "We can't stop all of them." Crawl looked back at the human. "You're helping us fix this." The human raised an eyebrow. "Helping? You caused the problem." The human thought about that for a moment. Then he smiled. "That's fair." Crawl was surprised. "You'll help?" The human looked down the corridor where the prisoners were approaching. Then he said something that confused both guards. "I don't like chaos." Crawl frowned. You literally cause chaos. The human pointed at the station walls. No, this is bad design. Another explosion echoed through the station. This one louder. Emergency sirens started again. Varric checked the tablet and suddenly went pale. Krall noticed immediately. What is it? Varric's voice was quiet. The reactor. Krall froze. What about it? Varric turned the screen. A warning message flashed across it. Reactor stability. If it were Krall, felt his stomach drop. If the reactor goes critical, Varric finished the sentence. The entire station explodes. The human looked at the screen calmly. Then he sighed. Of course it does. Krall turned toward him. You're the engineer who hacked the transport ship. The human nodded. Krall pointed at the tablet. Can you fix this? The human looked around the chaotic corridor. Escaped prisoners, broken systems, failing power grid, and a reactor about to overload. Then he smiled slightly. Yeah. Krall blinked. You can? The human nodded. Probably. Krall grabbed his arm. Then start moving. The human began walking down the corridor, calm as ever. Krall followed beside him. Why would you help us? The human answered without looking back. Because if this station explodes, Krall waited. The human finished the sentence. I explode too. Krall sighed. Fair point. But the human added one more thing, quietly. And also, Krall looked at him. What? The human smiled. I'm curious who sabotaged the reactor. Krall stopped walking. What do you mean? The human looked back at him. Because I didn't do that. Krall felt a cold chill run down his spine. That if the human didn't sabotage the reactor, then someone else on the station did. And they were about to destroy everything. The detention corridors were now in complete chaos. Prisoners were running everywhere. Some were fighting each other. Some were trying to escape deeper into the station. And somewhere in the distance, the reactor alarms kept screaming. Officer Krall ran beside the human. You said you can fix the reactor. The human nodded calmly. Maybe. Krall almost shouted. Maybe is not good enough. The human kept walking quickly down the hallway. Relax. Panic makes people stupid. Krall stared at him. You're not the one responsible for 300 prisoners escaping. The human looked at him. Actually, that part might still be partly your fault. Krall groaned. Varric suddenly pointed at the station map. The reactor chamber is 3 levels below us. Krall nodded. Then we take the maintenance elevator. They reached the elevator doors. Krall pressed the button. Nothing happened. He pressed it again. Still nothing. Varric checked his tablet. Power failure in this sector. Krall cursed. The human looked at the door. Then at the nearby maintenance panel, he opened it quickly. Wires and circuits filled the small compartment. Krall frowned. What are you doing? The human smiled slightly. Improvising. His fingers moved quickly across the wires. 2 seconds later, the elevator lights turned on. Krall blinked. You just repair the elevator? The human shrugged. Temporary fix. The doors opened. They stepped inside. The elevator dropped fast toward the reactor level. Krall watched the human carefully. You're way too calm. The human leaned against the wall. I grew up on Earth. Krall frowned. That explains nothing. The human smiled. On Earth, everything is trying to kill you. Krall didn't know if he was joking. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. Heat blasted into the hallway. The reactor chamber was glowing bright orange. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Varric looked at the screen. Reactor temperature is rising fast. Krall turned to the human. Can you stop it? The human walked toward the reactor console. He studied the screen for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. I see the problem. Krall waited. Well, the human pointed at the system logs. Someone overloaded the cooling system. Varric frowned. But who? Before anyone could answer, the voice echoed across the chamber. I did. Krall turned immediately. Standing on the other side of the reactor room was another alien, tall, armored, holding a plasma rifle. Krall recognized him instantly. Commander Telvok. Telvok smiled coldly. You finally figured it out. Krall looked shocked. You sabotaged the station? Telvok nodded. This prison holds some of the most dangerous criminals in the galaxy. Krall frowned. So? Telvok's voice was calm. The government pays billions to maintain this facility. He raised his weapon slightly. But if the station explodes, those criminals disappear. Krull realized the truth. You're getting paid to destroy it. Telvok smiled. Exactly. Varek whispered. You're insane. Telvok shrugged. I prefer profitable. Then he pointed the rifle at them. Unfortunately, you discovered the truth. Krull slowly raised his weapon, but Telvok's rifle charged faster. You won't stop me. Suddenly, the human walked past Krull, straight toward the reactor console. Telvok frowned. Human, stop moving. The human ignored him, but he started typing rapidly on the control panel. Telvok shouted, I said stop. Krull tensed, but the human kept typing calmly. Telvok fired. The plasma shot hit the metal floor beside them. Krull shouted, get down. But the human didn't move. 0.5 seconds later, the reactor alarms suddenly stopped. The orange glow began fading. Varek looked at the screen. Reactor temperature stabilizing. Krull stared. You fixed it? The human nodded. Yep. Telvok's face turned furious. You ruined everything. He aimed his rifle again. But before he could fire, the human turned and moved faster than anyone expected. In 1 second, he crossed the room in the next second. Telvok's rifle was on the floor, and Telvok himself was slammed against the wall. Unconscious, Krull stared in disbelief again. Just disarmed the commander. The human shrugged. He looked angry. Varek checked the console again. Reactor stabilized. Explosion prévented. Krull finally relaxed. For the first time since the alarm started, he looked at the human. You saved the entire station. The human leaned against the console. Yeah. Krull asked quietly why. The human smiled slightly. Because blowing up space stations is bad engineering. Krull shook his head. You're unbelievable. The human looked around the reactor room. Then he asked one last question. So Krull sighed. What now? The human smiled. Now we go fix your prison break. Krull groaned. This is going to be a long day. The human nodded. Yep. And somewhere far above them, 300 prisoners were still running loose.